This is one of the final frontiers for farmers trying to keep the live sheep export industry. Late last week, farmers lined about 3 kilometres of road here in Muresk in regional Western Australia, where a parliamentary inquiry was examining the federal government's decision to ban live sheep exports by sea by 2028.
It's important to make a stand today to represent our industry.
Organisers estimate up to 2,000 people travelled from across the state to voice their concerns.
We're sick of being ignored. We do exist. Come and have a look at us. Here we are.
I'm astounded that so many people came out.
I hope that communicates how concerned these people seriously are about the loss of the live export sheep market.
Phil Gardiner has farmed sheep for almost 40 years.
We've got this wrong. These guys are doing the right thing now. How can we punish them with a ban?
The confronting images about to be shown have been at the forefront of the debate about live animal exports. In 2017, more than 2,000 sheep died, mainly from heat stress on board a single ship, the Awassi Express, which was travelling from Australia to the Middle East. The industry says significant improvements have been made since, including strict guidelines for managing heat, stress, lower stocking densities and humane slaughter standards in importing countries.
We didn't do it properly for many years, but now we are doing it properly.
Live exports make up just 2% of Australia's total sheep meat export market, according to the federal government. But farmers argue a ban will leave the entire industry vulnerable, saying they're concerned Australian abattoirs won't keep up with demand if more sheep flood the domestic market.
If you can guarantee to me that the abattoirs are not going to close, not going to go broke, get enough labour, if you can guarantee to me that there's not going to be a drought, sure, we'll be fine. But you can't guarantee that. You can't guarantee that.
Agriculture Minister Murray Watt says the phase-out includes a $107 million transition package to help the sheep industry.
The evidence from processors themselves is that we don't require substantial government investments in new abattoirs in Western Australia or anywhere else.
But the inquiry has heard evidence indicating otherwise.
These abattoirs identified that capital investments of more than $435 million is required for the expansion of processing capacity in Western Australia.
There is massive and growing demand in the Middle East and right around the world for Australian lamb and mutton products, and I want to see them being processed in Western Australia to create more jobs and more exports for Western Australia.
A ban has been coming for a while. Labor went to the 2022 election promising to end live sheep exports, but it was only last month that it announced a date to phase out exports by sea, May 2028. And this parliamentary inquiry was called just 2 weeks ago after the Agriculture Minister introduced legislation to Parliament.
Look, we are desperately running short on time.
The inquiry has only had a week to host 2 public hearings, one in Canberra and this one in WA, the only state where live sheep export ships still operate. The committee has another week to produce an advisory report due this Friday.
An insulting token effort. That's all this is.
This is our whole livelihood and they're just treating us like we just don't matter.
We need to get moving. We need to start providing the funding to farmers and the industry to begin that adjustment. I don't want to pretend that this is about whether we should go ahead with this or not. It's about the piece of legislation that will go to the Parliament and whether any improvements can be made to that legislation.
The number of sheep dying on live export ships has fallen dramatically in recent years. But Dr. Lynn Simpson, a former live export vet, argues there's no amount of regulation that can make the voyages safe and humane enough for sheep.
We don't measure death as an animal welfare indicator because that animal's dead now. That doesn't have a welfare problem because it's not feeling pain and suffering. So airlines, for example, an airline wouldn't advertise going, fly with Qantas, less people die with us.
The federal government commissioned Dr. Simpson to help improve Australia's animal welfare standards on ships more than a decade ago. But what she saw instead turned her off the trade for good.
We've got the best written legislation, but do we want to stand up and tell the world we've got wonderful welfare because we've got the greatest legislation of a terrible, cruel trade?
There's no doubt that farmers in Western Australia are doing it tough at the moment, but restructuring the industry and expanding onshore processing, we think that provides a very positive future for Western Australian farmers.
Our younger son has taken it up with a relish.
Phil Gardiner recently passed his farm on to his son, James. He says all the talk about the live export ban has already hurt the market.
We were selling some of our wethers for about $125 to $150 per head through live export. But more recently, that's dropped to close to $50 and in some cases lower than that. Then, if we do want to sell sheep into the local market, and we're talking $20, $25 at best.
They say that for them, if there's no ships, it could mean no sheep at all.
Some mistakes were made in the live export industry. They were. Welfare of the animals on live export boats now is very good. And I'd like the Prime Minister or whoever it might be to go on one of these boats and have a look for themselves.
These animals go from being healthy to being ill, to being really ill, to collapsing, to dying. This is when it goes badly, but every voyage has the risk of going badly.